Got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you were born to win. But to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win. But to win big, you will need a much bigger frying pan. Yeah, you heard it right. You got to have a bigger frying pan. I'm a boxing fan. For years and years, I followed the heavyweight division going way back to John L. Sullivan. I read all of the stories about them. When Gentleman Jim Corbett was in contention, he was a heavyweight champion at that moment, and he was one day, he loved to fish. One day he was out doing his road work, running around a lake, and he noticed a fisherman there who was having a fisherman's dream day. He'd cast out, pull in, cast out, pull in, cast out, pull in. But then Corbett noticed something. He was taking the big fish and throwing them back, and then taking the little fish and keeping them. He was, amused and concerned and puzzled. So he ran over to the fisherman and said, "Sir, I love to fish myself, but you're doing something I've never seen another fisherman do. When you catch a big one, you throw him back. When you catch a little one, you keep it. Why do you do that?" The fisherman sadly shook his head and he said, "Man, I don't have any choice. You see, all I've got is just a little old bitty frying pan." How many times do we as people say, "Lord, don't give me such a big idea. You see, that'll stretch me. That'll make me work harder. That will make me give up some of my TV time. Don't do that, Lord. Just give me a simple one so I can have my own life my own way. Besides, all I've got's just a little old bitty frying pan." Well, I got good news for you, folks. God does not issue small frying pans. He only issues big ones. I want you to start thinking in terms not of what you are, but what you're capable of becoming. And so growth will be one of the prime things we'll be talking about, because it is critically important that we understand that. I never will forget when we first moved I moved to Dallas, Texas. I heard a story about a lady that went to her lawyer to talk about a divorce. And the lawyer said, "Well, why are you divorcing the man?" And she just kind of started rambling on, And he said, "No." He said, "Be something specific." And she said, "Like how?" He said, "Well, do you have any grounds?" She said, "Oh, yes." He said, "We've got about 30 acres right out here on the north end of town." He said, "No, that's not what I'm talking about. Do you have a grudge?" She said, "No, but we do have a neat little carport on the side of the house." He said, "Man, we need to make it personal." And she said, "Well, like how?" Well, he said, "Do you accept any responsibility?" She said, "Like how?" He said, "Well, do you ever wake up grouchy?" She said, "Oh, no, I just let him get up every day on his own whenever he will." And he said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Does he ever beat you up?" She said, "Oh, no, I'm up every day at least an hour and a half before he even turns over." And the lawyer said, "Well, ma'am," said, "I'm having trouble. Why do you want to divorce the man?" And she said, "Well, truthfully, the guy just can't communicate." We want to talk about communication. So communication is very, very important. And not only will I talk about it, ladies and gentlemen, but what my associate Chris Dunham, who will speak next, will also be talking about communication skills a little more, right down to the very point. But how many of you, this is a very important question, how many of you consider yourself to be honest and at least reasonably intelligent? May I see your hands, please? How many of you honest, intelligent people, as a general rule, get about twice as much work done on the day before you go on vacation? Can I see your hands, please? All right. Second question. How much more did you know on the day before you went on vacation than you knew the day before? Would you agree that it's minuscule, just a very, very little bit? And yet you doubled your performance. Why is that? Well, if we can figure out why and learn how, and then repeat it every day without working any longer or any harder, does it make more sense that we would be more effective on our job, more beneficial to ourselves, to our family, to the company, and to the community? Does that make sense? Answer is yes. I'll help you with the tough ones, okay? There's no question about it. How many of you on the night before, the day before vacation, incidentally, we're on pages 82 and 83 of your workbook, and you might want to take some notes as we go along. How many of you have noticed on the day before vacation that the night before that day, you got your laptop out, or just a sheet of paper, and said, tomorrow I got to do this, and this, and this, and this. That's what we call short-term goal setting. Now, how many of you also on the day before vacation, when you got to work the next day because you had lined out a plan of action, how many of you when you got to work immediately got busy and went to work? Okay. How many of you have noticed that as a general rule, people with nothing to do want to do it with you? Can I see your hands? Did you know that according to the research, a little over 1 hour every day is wasted in idle conversation? Much of it gossip, having nothing to do with your performance on the job or helping anybody else perform better. On a typical day, how many times do we see people walking around, you know, and somebody says, I want to ask you a question. It won't take but a minute. And somebody else says, wait, I just have another question myself. It'll take about 2 minutes. A little over an hour a day is wasted in idle gossip every day. That's 5 hours a week. That's 250 hours a year. That's 6 weeks of life totally gone to waste. As a matter of fact, I just told you a half-truth, because when you're talking to those folks, ladies and gentlemen, that means at least 2 people are involved. I have no research to prove this, but I believe that many small companies have gone bankrupt because they did not recognize the value of a minute, or 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. Roger Staubach, you know, went to Naval Academy, and then he played football for the Cowboys. Roger Staubach told me one day when we were together, he said, Zig, I did something that a lot of people will find a little surprising. I made my best grades during football season. He said, you know, my schedule was so tough, and the practice was so demanding. When I finished the practice every day, he said, I immediately took a shower, immediately got into my books. I recognized everything. It's not lack of time that we suffer from. It's lack of direction and commitment in our lives. A minute can be enormously important depending entirely on which side of the bathroom door you're standing on. So when we start taking care of our minutes, now you know earthquakes and hurricanes get all the publicity, but did you know that termites do more damage than both of them? And they take such little bitty bites. But there's so many of them, and they keep on biting and biting and biting. Little things done on a daily basis as a habit will make all the difference in the world. The reason on that day before vacation you get more done is you've got a game plan and you accepted responsibility of following through on it. That's the reason you perform better, and I want you to think about this. If planning one day of your life can make such a radical difference in that day, what a difference a game plan for life would make. Now, what I'm really talking about is attitude. Attitude involves everything that we do. And I'm also, ladies and gentlemen, want to tell you what the healthiest attitude of all is. It's the attitude of gratitude. Psychologically speaking, Dr. Frank Menrith of the world-renowned Menrith Clinic says the more you express gratitude for what you have, the more you will have to express gratitude for. And then he said on the other side of the coin, the more you complain about the problems you have, the more problems you will have to complain about. You see, in our society, we have far too many people walking around looking like the picture on their driver's license. You know, acting like somebody licked all of the red off of the candy, acting like the cruise director for the Titanic. We need to understand what impact that has on ourselves and on other people. The more you complain about those problems, so if you want problems, ladies and gentlemen, that's where you get them. Here's what I have noticed for many, many years. When you ask a typical person how you doing, the most popular answer is not too bad. And once in a while somebody says, I'm doing good. Some people say, wonderfully well. Some people say, well, under the circumstances, making you wonder what they're doing under there in the first place. Some will say, so far so good, expecting it to get worse. The correct answer, and when I'm talking with any of you after this is all over, here's the answer. I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and here's the correct answer. I'm doing better than good. That's the correct answer always. You might say, well, suppose I'm not doing better than good. Am I telling the truth? Of course you are. You're just telling it in advance, that's all. You do expect it to get better, don't you? Now, that answer is a first person, present tense, positive affirmation of who you are, where you are, and in many cases, whose you are. I will absolutely guarantee you when somebody asks you how you're doing, if you will say that, 1 person out of 3 will comment, man, I like that. Or what'd you say? Or, you know, I'm going to start doing that myself. In management and leadership, ladies and gentlemen, when one of your associates that's on the payroll there does something good, instead of saying, you know, that was good, why don't you say, you know, as I've looked at things that are good and looking at what you're doing, I got to tell you, this job was done better than good. I guarantee you they will cherish that one from here on in. And our relationships, which we'll be talking about, are so terribly, terribly important. But I want to show you something about conversation and what people say to each other, particularly in leadership and management. Now, here's something I learned, ladies and gentlemen, from a little lady with a 5th grade education. She was my mama. My dad died when I was 5. There were 6 of us at home, too young to work. The Depression was on. We survived because we had 3 milk cows and a big garden. Never will I forget my first solo assignment in the garden. I was 8 years old. I had some beans that needed some tending. My mama called me out to hoe the 2 rows of beans, and they were long rows. She told me, she said, now when you get through, call me. I'll be working on the other side of the garden. I want to look it over. So when she gave me the complete instructions, and then when I got through, I finally said, Mama, I'm done. My mama was a little lady, wore a cloth sunbonnet over her face to protect it from that hot Mississippi sun. I said, I'm done, Mama, and she walked over. When she got about 10 paces from the row of beans, she started shaking her head. I said, what's the matter, Mama? And my mama looked at me and kind of smiled and said, son, you're going to have to lick this calf over. Now, how many of you are so underprivileged that you do not clearly understand that perfectly plain Mississippi colloquialism, lick that calf over? How many of you don't understand that or never heard it? Well, don't be embarrassed about it. You know, a lot of people are just ignorant about the positive things. I was privileged. I learned that was what she was saying was, son, you got to do this over. Now, let me tell you what was said. For most boys, what you've done would be all right. But you're not most boys. You're my son, and my son can do better than this. She raised the bar on performance.